very different for me compared to the first three send-offs on our first three deployments. The only, my family was there. They came to Denison, Iowa. We did our send-off. That send-offs were happening all over the state of Iowa because the entire 2nd Brigade of the 34th Infantry Division, which I belong to, was deploying. And that is primarily the entire state of Iowa. So my family came to Denison, and I knew that when we got on that bus, that was going to be it for a year. What I didn't know is if this was going to be another Iraq deployment and could potentially be 2 years. Nobody knew that, but that was a thought in the back of our mind because it happened to us once before. But a year of Afghanistan seemed to some like a very short amount of time for those families that went through the almost 2 years of Iraq. What I never did was I never spoke much about the things I learned about Afghanistan in my studies to my family because the equipment the military provided us in Iraq was by far the best. We lost 2 soldiers out of our unit, but that was due to force-on-force fighting, not IEDs. We didn't lose any soldiers to an IED. There were soldiers that lost their lives, but as a unit, we didn't lose any. So our families, for the most part, knew that we were in a bad place and in a bad way, but the equipment that we were provided was saving our lives, and it worked. Afghanistan, we didn't talk much about force-on-force fighting because it doesn't matter what kind of equipment you got on there. There's a battalion commander out there that continued to remind us that, gentlemen, you can do everything right in combat, but the enemy still has a vote. He's still going to have his good day. So, that was one thing I felt in my 17 years of service at that point when we were deploying to Afghanistan. It hit me hard, those words he spoke, but I didn't speak to my family about that. That was something I was going to keep to myself. It was going to motivate me. So when we were leaving, it was very hard for me to show a lot of emotion. I was very, very focused. I had educated myself. I had mentally prepared myself. What I might have fell short on was how were we as a unit going to deal with losses in combat. Fortunate enough for us, our soldiers again were by far the best. We engaged a lot of Taliban over a year's time frame. There's no doubt in my mind that we made a difference in the Paktia province of Afghanistan. We had one wounded in action from combat, and we brought every soldier home. So when I got home from that deployment, I took the biggest deep breath that I think I've ever taken in my life, and knew that we'd done something right. Because not every unit in our organization brought everyone home. So
what's it like when you go into combat and you're shooting to basically kill somebody and they're shooting to kill you? What goes through your minds?
Survival. What I have at home and my brothers and sisters to the right and left of me are more important than what they have. That was what motivated me. With the thought of what our battalion commander told us, the enemy has a vote. He's going to have a good day. We're not going to always have good days. that was motivation. That no, every day is going to be good for me, and for us as an organization. We have to make the smartest decisions we can as leaders, and nothing can fog our mind when it comes to decision making, because if we are smarter than them, we're more educated than them, and we think better tactically than them, we should never have a bad day. um, and that was the focus. That I had the greatest company commander. He's my brother and will be forever. We've served in multiple organizations together, and I was blessed to have him as a company commander. He let me lead non-commissioned officers how I felt they needed to be led. He let me uphold the standards and enforce the standards that I thought needed to be upheld for combat soldiers, and he took care of the tactical business. If I felt there was a safety issue, we would look at ways of mitigating the risk, and he would always listen to me, and it was a true pleasure to work with a man like that. He was smart. He was educated, and he had passion. He was a family man as well, and not never once does a plan go exactly perfect, but that was a man that could take a plan, implement the plan, and make adjustments on the fly with that passion and them values at the forefront of what is going to be best for our soldiers and our organization. And so I don't know how many of our soldiers laid in bed at night or laid on their cots when they had an opportunity and had a little downtime of the combat operations we were doing, and thought about, you know, the enemy or the Taliban having their good day. I don't know how many people thought about that. It's hard to speak for everyone else, but I know I didn't.
Did you ever get in a situation that you thought, I might not get out of this one?
No. We had long days, but and there was nights where after that long day we would sit back and we would we would have we call them leader huddles about what went wrong, what could we have done different, what did we do right, and to try to prevent those type of days in the future. But there were nights where it was, how did we get out of that mess? But there was never a time that I don't think for anyone that we never thought we would get out of that.
When we got the news comes on, and we get it here, when it comes through your town that you lost 2 soldiers from the 133rd.
Mm-hmm. That was Iraq.
Iraq.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about that?
I was actually at that event when that happened. That was a very, very long day for all of us. We were on our way to Jordan, escorting, and there was some suspicious activity going on off in the distance, off of the roadway, and an IED explosion happened. So immediately we thought that those were the individuals that were watching our convoy, and potentially they were the ones that had detonated the IED, or they were at least emplacing IEDs. So we took a small group of vehicles, I think 4 or 5 at that time, and we kind of pursued this vehicle of individuals, and as they must have felt that they were going to be pinned down or surrounded, they went to fight with AK-47s and machine guns. So of course, an infantryman's mentality, you're going to bring the fight to us, we're going to fight you. And we had overwhelming numbers against them, and that was one of those days that the enemy got his vote, and we lost two soldiers, and the hardest thing about that was, well, one of the hardest things about that was we had to continue what we were doing. We had to deal with that situation immediately, but we were only halfway to Jordan, and we had 150 trucks with 150 Iraqi civilians that we were securing. We couldn't go back to base. We had another day and a half on the road that was probably the quietest day and a half ever in Afghanistan, because there was very little radio traffic. Just a day and a half of reflecting, how the heck did that happen? What went wrong? Just reminiscing in your mind about it, everything. Their families, small communities. We all know each other. We've all been through this before. Our wives have supported each other before. Our communities have supported our wives while we were gone. That's the great thing about small communities. So we had multiple communities mourning. We had soldiers that were trying to mourn. Plus, we had a mission we had to complete, and we had to continue on. We couldn't just throw our hands in the air and quit for 4 or 5 days and until everybody was ready to go again. So that was when leadership really stood up, and as leaders, we all got together and we took we took an evening and we reminisced and we mourned and we told stories and we talked. And the next day we got up with a focus that we have to get our soldiers back out there doing what we're doing and in the right mind frame, because it's, to watch that happen is a burning memory in everyone's mind. To remember the scene, if you want to call it, not a lot of us have ever experienced that. That was the first time we've experienced a combat loss. Remember, our first 2 deployments were peacekeeping operations. So, we've dealt with IED blast by this time, a lot of IEDs. We dealt with every other issue that you think that could come about in the environment that we were in, except the death of a brother, and we lost 2 that day. It was pretty tough.
So now you got a Bronze Star. Wait a second. I have that bird. Okay, you want to tell me about your Bronze Star?
Well, my Bronze Star. I came home from Afghanistan. Very honored that I received a Bronze Star. My Bronze Star was awarded to me for leadership, for the passion. I'm trying to remember what the citation read, but it was for the passion of the passion and infantry spirit. Basically, it's not very often that as a first sergeant of a company the size of ours in Afghanistan. Now, I mentioned we took 120 to 130 soldiers from the Denison Armory to Afghanistan. What I didn't mention was we also had a 20-man platoon of active duty military police that were under our command. We had about a 20-man element of active duty field artillery that was under our command, and the company commander and I had our own base that we ran. So not only as a first sergeant was I tasked with the administrative part of managing our unit, the safety and the health and welfare of our soldiers, but I had the honor and the privilege of serving with active duty units that were under our command, and some of those soldiers to this day are lifelong friends. But our only mission wasn't fighting Taliban. That was a daily occurrence. Part of our other mission was we were paired up with a Afghan National Army organization of about 300 and some soldiers that we were tasked with implementing into every mission that we ever did and training them to be better soldiers. So, with that being said, I had developed an 8-week medical training program that I was in charge of, teaching the Afghan Army soldiers how to deal with combat injuries, combat wounds, how to call in medevacs for themselves and for their soldiers, how to perform life-saving skills, and so this training event took place over the course of 8 weeks, and they were actually given a training certificate, which the Afghan Army soldiers have never seen a certificate. We were on a mission, and I don't recall which general came in on that operation, but we had lost a couple Afghan Army soldiers, and we had a couple wounded. And of course, as an American, having our own trained medics with us, those guys wanted to jump in and help those wounded Afghan Army partners of ours. That general was on ground because he was surveying the entire situation, and those Afghan soldiers told the American medics that we appreciate your help, but we don't need it. First Sergeant Dennis taught us everything we need to know. And that general, I recall that general coming up to me and said, "I'm assuming they're talking about you, young man." And kindly and politely I said, "I believe they are too, sir, but we'll have to have this conversation at another time." We just got done in a pretty big firefight.
Right.
He wanted to have a conversation out there, But those Afghan soldiers performed first aid like any American medic would. They called in their own medevacs and got their own soldiers out of there. And 3 of those soldiers lived through those combat wounds. And I believe that was a lot in part of why I received a Bronze Star for my passion and my effort with the Afghans, for the care and the health and welfare of our own soldiers, and for doing exactly what we were asked to do. I received a pretty prestigious award. I myself, it was typically unlike a company first sergeant in